Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. Wasn't going to make a video tonight, was just going to chill and relax I guess. But I saw the announcement of a fight on the undercard of Terence Crawford versus Israel Madrimov. Of course this card is going to be Saudi Arabia's first card promoted outside of Saudi Arabia. The card itself is pretty good. You also have Jarrell Miller versus Andy Ruiz on that card, and for what it is, that fight will be fun. Of course, we also had Virgil Ortiz versus Tim Tszyu. That fight, however, unfortunately has been called off due to Tim Tszyu's cut not healing in time. That was a big disappointment to me, I can't lie. That was the fight I was looking forward to most on the card. But regardless, they have added Jared Anderson versus Martin Bakole at heavyweight. Now, for me, this is a very intriguing fight, and quite frankly, I'm shocked this fight is happening. You know, you consider that Jared Anderson is seen as maybe the most promising prospect at heavyweight in the USA. There's definitely, you know, some hype behind him. Top Rank have put a lot of effort into trying to build him up, etc. And they have high hopes of him. In certain fights, he's shown some good promise, good athletic ability, good speed for a heavyweight. But in other fights, he has shown some of his technical flaws. You know, against Charles Martin, and of course his last fight against Riyad Miri, where Riyad Miri was being negative, and Anderson had no real idea on how to break him down. Anderson, to me, is the typical heavyweight prospect who has a lot of raw attributes and athletic talents, but he's one of those heavyweight prospects where I feel his technical ability is a fair way behind his athletic ability. I think he's the type of fighter needs a lot of learning fights, a lot of different styles, a lot of sparring to really hone those skills. And the fact this fight with Martin Bakole has been made, I'm pretty shocked. Martin Bakole, first and foremost, is a very big heavyweight. He's like 6'6", usually weighs in at around 280-ish pounds. Even at heavyweight, he is physically imposing, he carries good power in both hands, and in recent years, Martin Bakole has been on a comeback trail. Of course, back in 2018, he was stopped by Michael Hunter in a 10-rounder. He was actually stopped in the last round of that fight. And after that fight, a lot of people wrote Bakole off, you know. It was kind of like, you know, he was getting outboxed, he was having his moments, but as the fight wore on, Bakole gassed and Hunter really took over. And yeah, at times, it looked like Bakole wanted a way out. And after that, he was written off. But since then, he's been on the comeback trail. He's won several fights since. And in recent times, he's picked up some decent wins. In 2020, he beat Sergey Kuzmin on points. A very good former Russian amateur, hard puncher. You know, he then followed up in 2022 with a very good win over Tony Yoka. At the time, Tony Yoka was unbeaten. He went into that fight as a favourite, but he beat the hell out of Tony Yoka over 10 rounds. Tony Yoka couldn't get away from Martin Bakole, and Bakole swarmed him, worked the body, and just manhandled him in there. He also beat Ihor Shevardutski. That was back in April of 2023. I know Shevardutski isn't much, but it's the same Shevardutski who went the distance with Kubrat Pulev and had a relatively competitive fight with Kubrat Pulev. And of course, in his last fight, Bakole stopped Carlos Takam in 4 rounds. So in recent times, Bakole is starting to get on a roll. He's not been as active as I would have liked, but, you know, he's putting some okay wins together. He's slowly climbing up the rankings, and in his last 3 fights in particular, he has looked very good. You know, very dangerous. And I've always seen Bakole as a fighter who, almost to the opposite of Anderson. Anderson is a guy who's athletically gifted, obviously trains hard, is always in shape. Bakole is the opposite. I think Bakole has some very good technical ability. I think he's got a unique skill set for a heavyweight. For such a big guy, Bakole is actually very good on the inside. He's a very good body puncher. His uppercuts are very deadly, up close. And he puts his shots together well on the inside. He creates space for himself really effectively. He's got some underrated skills underrated ability, in my opinion. And he can box a little bit as well. He's got a decent jab, he's got a decent straight right, and he can punch. Technically, he's better than Jared Anderson, in my opinion. The issue I've had with Bakole over the years is his physical shape. You know, in his last fight against Carlos Takam, he weighed in at 299 pounds. Listen, maybe that works for him, but we've not really seen a guy test that gas tank since he's been weighing this heavy. You know, only 4 years ago when he fought Sergey Kuzmin, he weighed in at 251 pounds. You know, just over 3 years later against Takam, that was October of 2023, he weighs in at 299. That's a hell of a weight gain. So I am concerned about that in a sense, but listen, I'm shocked this fight's been made. Based on what we've seen from Jared Anderson, I think this is a very risky fight, and a fight in which I make Martin Bakole a favourite. Anderson has okay power, but does he hit hard enough to get Bakole's respect? If he doesn't, he could be in for a long, long night. Because keeping this guy off is not going to be easy. We saw Tony Yoka try to box behind the jab, straight right, half step back, you know, trying to offer a little bit of movement, but he couldn't get the respect of Martin Bakole, and Bakole just walked him down, and eventually, you know, Tony Yoka was drawn into Bakole's fight, where he was beat up, and quite frankly, in that fight, Tony Yoka was completely exposed. Could we see something similar in this bout? I put Bakole in a similar bracket to a guy like Ajit Caballel, in terms of, I think the guy's very talented but a little undervalued. Not so much with Caballel anymore, but I put Bakole in that sort of bracket. I think he's got some very interesting attributes for a heavyweight. And to be fair, I mentioned his weight, but despite that, he does throw the combinations pretty well. His punch output isn't terrible for a heavyweight, and he brings that pressure. He'll walk you down behind a guard, and he'll ask questions of you. This is a hard fight. Bakole's a bigger man. He's a stronger man. He's a harder puncher. He's more experienced. He's fought better competition. I think this one could be a bit of bad matchmaking from Top Rank. The fact they've allowed this fight. If Anderson comes through this fight, I will be a bit impressed, I have to say, because I think he's going to lose this fight. When I look at this fight, I'm going to take a phrase out of Carl Froch's book. I think Bakole is going to be too big and too strong. And I know recently we saw Usyk prove that doesn't always matter, but I think in this fight it will. I'm not convinced that Anderson can gain Bakole's respect. And if he can't, can he box on his toes for 10, 12 rounds, however long this fight is? I'm not sure, because Bakole is going to apply that pressure, both mental and physical. And when those hands start to fly, I'm not sure whether Jared Anderson can take that lever, to be honest with you. You know, people have questioned Anderson's toughness, both mental and physical, you know, based on the Charles Martin fight, but also based on his outside the ring comments, you know, seems very, very sensitive to criticism. You know, that heart-to-heart he had with Roy Jones where he was blabbing and crying about how hard boxing is. This is going to be hard. So, we'll see what Anderson is made of here. I've got Bakole winning by stoppage, late. Share your thoughts below. Peace.